I'm alone in the science lab working on my experiment. The clock shows it's past midnight, but I barely notice. I'm lost in my work, surrounded by test tubes, bubbling flasks, and notebooks scribbled with theories. I was working on an experiment, something I'd waited all semester for. This wasn't any ordinary test, though. I was using a compound developed by the head of our department, a man obsessed with cellular mutation. As I set up the final pieces, I felt an uneasy thrill in the air. I connected the electrodes, double-checked the calculations, and then it was time. I flipped the switch. The compound started to bubble in its container, emitting a faint, sickly green glow. But then something went wrong. The liquid started to rise, bubbling faster and faster, until it burst out of its container, splattering across the floor. A thick fog seeped from the spilled liquid, curling around my feet, cold and heavy. I could feel it prickling my skin as if it were alive. I tried to step back, but my foot slipped, and I stumbled, barely catching myself on the edge of a desk. When I looked up, I noticed something moving in the mist, a figure shifting and stretching. Then it solidified. It was some sort of creature, a twisted mass of flesh and bone, with too many eyes and limbs that seemed to stretch in unnatural directions. It stood there, staring at me with unblinking, glowing eyes. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. And then it moved. It slithered forward, dragging itself across the floor with an eerie, wet sound. Panic surged through me as I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had to get out of there. I turned and bolted for the door, but the hallway outside was different. The walls seemed to shift, bending and twisting into impossible angles. The door behind me slammed shut, trapping me in this warped maze. I ran down the hallway, my footsteps echoing strangely as if the sound was bending and warping along with the walls. The lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to reach out toward me. Then, just as I thought I'd found an exit, the walls closed in, sealing off the way I'd come. I was trapped. I stumbled into another lab, hoping I could barricade myself inside. But the door wouldn't close. And then, I heard it. A wet, slithering sound coming closer, accompanied by a faint clicking like claws tapping against metal. I hid behind a desk, pressing myself into the shadows, and held my breath. The creature slithered into the room, its many eyes scanning the darkness. My heart raced as it passed just inches from me, its twisted form casting a long, distorted shadow. I waited until it moved further down the hall, then crept out of the room. But as I turned to leave, I saw my reflection in the lab's glass wall. My face looked wrong. My skin was pale, my eyes hollow. I shook my head, trying to shake off the fear, but I couldn't deny the feeling that something was changing inside me. I stumbled down another corridor, feeling the air grow colder with each step. The walls seemed to close in, and the floor beneath me tilted as if I were walking up a steep hill. Just as I rounded a corner, I came face to face with a mirror. My reflection looked back at me, but something was off. My eyes glowed faintly, just like the creature's. I stumbled backward, horrified, and the mirror shattered, sending shards of glass scattering across the floor. From the corner of my eye, I saw the creature slithering down the hallway toward me. Faster this time, as if it sensed my fear. I ducked into a classroom and slammed the door shut, piling desks and chairs in front of it. I could hear the creature scratching at the door, its breathing heavy and labored. I looked around, desperate for anything I could use to defend myself. My eyes fell on a small vial sitting on a nearby desk, labeled antidote. It was the same compound, but this one was meant to reverse the mutation. Without thinking, I grabbed the vial and injected it into my arm, hoping it would somehow protect me. Almost immediately, my skin began to burn, my veins darkening as the antidote spread through my body. I could feel something twisting inside me, like my cells were fighting against themselves. The door burst open and the creature slithered into the room, its eyes fixed on me. But something was different. I could feel a new strength coursing through me. I picked up a metal rod and swung it at the creature, knocking it back. It screeched, its form flickering, as if it were losing its grip on reality. I I didn't waste a second. I ran past it, out into the hallway, which was still twisting and warping. But I didn't care. I had to get out. The creature followed, but it was slower now, weaker. I could feel its grip on me loosening, as if the antidote had created a barrier between us. But just as I reached the exit, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I looked down and saw that my skin was still changing, my veins dark and twisted. I realized with horror that the antidote hadn't stopped the mutation. It had only delayed it. I stumbled out of the building and into the night, feeling my body shift and change with every step. I could still hear the creatures screeching in the distance, but it was fading, as if it were being pulled back into whatever nightmare it had come from. I collapsed onto the pavement, gasping for breath as my vision blurred. I could feel my body changing, my skin growing colder, harder. My last thought before everything went dark was that I hadn't escaped the lab. I had brought it with me. As my vision faded, I saw my own reflection in a nearby window, twisted and monstrous, with too many eyes and limbs that didn't belong. And then, just before everything went black, I heard it, the creature's voice whispering in my mind. "You're one of us now."